Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of The Bright Side of Life. It's me, your host, Melissa Bright, and today I am talking to my new friend, Angie Berrett. Angie, they, is a registered nurse and advanced trauma informed yoga instructor who helps people from mental health struggles relieve stress, anxiety, depression, and PTSD through play and movement. After going from child abuse survivor to registered nurse to yoga instructor, she has spent much of her life caring for others. In 2017, she hit rock bottom and started on a journey to heal her pain. Playful movements helped her overcome her suffering. Now she uses play and movements to help others heal from their pain, stress, anxiety, depression, and PTSD. So let's welcome Angie to the show. Angie, welcome. How are you doing today?
Hi, Melissa. Thank you so much for having me. I am so good today. How are you?
I am doing wonderful. Thank you. Thank you for asking. Okay, so today we're going to be talking about Angie's story, and we're going to dive in on what trauma informed yoga is, how she teaches it, the difference between this and regular yoga, I guess we could say, the benefits.
Traditional yoga.
Right. There we go. That's the word I was looking for. And all that fun stuff. And then at the end, we are actually going to do a little practice that anyone can do. So if you're listening, just know you can always go to YouTube to watch the video version of this episode. So let's get started, shall we?
Yes.
Angie, can you tell me a little bit about your childhood? And I guess I'm going to ask if you can tell me before the abuse started, like who was Angie before the abuse? What were you like?
That is a great question, and one that I am not able to answer because my abuse started when I was very young. All I remember is that it started when I was very young. So this has been something that has shaped my whole life.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. And I was like, that is a possibility that
Yeah.
could be an option.
Yeah.
Okay. So then who was Angie? Or I guess what should I ask? Can you tell me in as whatever you want to about your abuse? You get that I told you. You can tell me as much or as little a bit about that. But I'm asking because I want to see who this shaped you as a person. Like what was Angie? Who was Angie after this, you know?
Yes. Yeah, no, absolutely. Like I said, my abuse started when I was very young. It was, I had multiple abusers, and it was done by friends of my parents. It was not my parents, it was friends of my parents. And it happened actually at church. There was the only word that I can come up with to describe it is a pedophile cult. There was a pedophile cult hiding out within the congregation, which can actually be very common, by the way. And so this started, like I said, I was very young. This is really all I've known because it started so young and because it happened at church. My abusers used many of the teachings of my parents' faith as ways to control me. So I grew up with a very with a belief in a God that was very punishing, because a lot of what happened was, I was told, was punishment because I was bad or things like that. So I grew up with the fear of God because my parents were in this very into their faith and into their religion. And I was having this separate experience happening unbeknownst to them. That just kind of played into each other.
Okay. And that was actually going to be my next question is if your parents knew, I was hoping the answer would be no, obviously.
The answer is no. Yeah, and I think about it. So I'm 44, and this happened 40 years ago. Sexual abuse was not being talked about. Abuse was not being talked about. It wasn't as common of knowledge, and it's common knowledge today, and yet it still is happening. And so, no, my parents didn't know, and there are many reasons why I see why they wouldn't have known what was happening.
Yeah. Can I ask you how long it went on for?
Yes, so I don't have clear memories of it. In fact, I didn't have any memories until 2017. I started having memories come out in 2017. So my life
Wow.
until that point, I knew something was wrong. I had what I call a black hole of pain inside of me. I'd gone through an abusive marriage, and I thought it was related to that. And in 2017, I'm going to jump to the future.
Yeah, that's fine.
Answer that question.
Yeah.
So in 2017, my partner started cheating on me, and I found out through Facebook. And so the betrayal by my partner is what triggered the release of memories of my childhood, betrayal of these family friends. And so it started this whole path. I was dealing with not only my partner having cheated on me, but also now memories of child abuse coming out.
Yeah.
And so I don't have clear memories. It has been through years of very intensive therapy that I have been able to regain what memories, what sensations. It's more kind of emotions. I do a very specific type of therapy that is designed for that. And so I have gaps in my memory. In fact, that was one of the reasons I knew there was a problem, because I don't have memories, good or bad, of my childhood. I don't remember much until I became a teenager.
Yeah.
And so I know I had periods when I was very little, and I had periods when I was a younger child, and I have memories of sexually being assaulted when I was a teenager. So it happened at various points. I'm guessing probably to some degree until I left for college when I was 18.
Yeah.
That was a definitive stopping point. I left.
Right, right. You are the second person that I have talked to that has told me that their memories of some kind of abuse literally came out in the most random time ever, many, many years later.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that is just, I don't want to say it's crazy, because now I think I do understand a little bit about like the brain and how the brain wants to keep us protected. So it actually
Yeah.
suppresses those memories. So you're
Yeah.
not constantly in that. But like,
Yes.
oh my gosh. Cause that was actually like one of my questions, like what was rock bottom like for you, like what that meant in 2017. And now you kind of answered that question. So wow. Okay. So I want to ask a little bit about this like black
Yeah.
hole.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Because you said you always like had this feeling that something was not right. Can you explain this black hole? Like people might be like, what does that even mean? What does that feel like? And I want to ask you this for other people that they may have think like, I've hinted that maybe I went through some kind of trauma or abuse, but I'm not sure. So that's why I'm asking this question.
Yeah, great question. And the answer is it's really hard for me to describe. In fact, that's why I call it just a black hole of pain.
Yeah.
And what it has felt like is um just this I'm going to come back to that term. So think of a black hole, and it's just kind of this nothingness.
Nothing.
That,
Yeah.
it escapes into nothingness. And yet there's pain, there's physical pain, there's emotional pain, there's just angst that was sitting inside of me. And I had been doing therapy with a therapist that specialized. After my marriage, I did I was going to say escape. I did manage to get out of an abusive marriage, and I was doing therapy with a therapist that specialized in women who were abused and sexually assaulted.
Mhm.
And we would get to a certain point in my therapy, and all of a sudden I would shut down. Like it would come too close to that black hole, and all of a sudden I couldn't connect to anything anymore.
Yeah.
And so my memories I kind of included in that, because I don't have memories, I don't have a sense. And so it's kind of all this stuff, and it's really, as I work with people now to help release their own pain, and
Mhm.
it's that sense of there's something wrong with me, all those negative beliefs that we have about ourselves
Yeah.
related to whatever it was that has shaped our childhood. And it's just that pain, that self-hatred, that where all of that is carried.
Okay. So my next question to you, did you always have this constant question of this has to be coming from somewhere? I don't know what. I don't know anything, I'm not sure, but it has to be coming from somewhere. Did you ever feel that?
Yes, yeah,
Okay.
frequently. And I couldn't figure out what it was. I had a good childhood. Before my memories came out, I had a
Yeah.
good childhood. My parents are kind people. They're supportive. I had a normal growing up. I didn't have to experience any of the things that could be considered traumatic that I knew of for what would happen to most children. And
Right.
I've done therapy for a number of years. I've been asked by every therapist I've seen, are you sure you weren't abused when you were a kid? And no, I swear. So it almost felt to me like there was something wrong with me, like that was
Yeah.
exacerbating that,
Yeah.
because I couldn't figure out why I hurt so bad. And then a lot of it I attributed to my marriage, but I'd done therapy for my marriage. I had healed and was able to have, I'd done so much work that I couldn't understand why I was still having so much pain. It was disproportionate to what had happened in my marriage and what I'd processed through.
Yeah.
So, oh my God, I can't remember what question you asked me. I went off on.
Oh, no, it's okay. The question of like something had to have happened. Like, this has to, what I wrote down, this has to be coming, but there has to be something like that has happened.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, thank you. Whew, thanks for redirecting me. So I figured that I'd had some sort of trauma, and it could have just been. So there's two different types of trauma, and I'm going to put that in quotes for those of you that aren't watching the video. There's trauma with a big T, which is events like child abuse, war, cars accidents, a lot of medical procedures, or trauma with a big T. And then there's trauma with a small t, which is kind of more and I'm going to say the day-to-day, the normal traumas that we as humans experience, those that negative self-talk, or somebody at school said something, when you're a kid, that kind of triggers that, just kind of the low grade stressors. And I figured that I'd had some sort of low grade stressors. I grew up in a very religious household.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not a very strict religious person. That was very hard for me because I am much more of a free spirit. So I figured it was more just kind of related to that struggle growing up in a religious household.
Right.
And I will admit, when I started having memories of my abuse, horrible as it was, there was a sense of relief that, okay, like there's a reason why I hurt so bad.
That was gonna be my question. I was like, there is, as bad as it was, at least you are now finding answers, because one of the biggest things for me, and I did not have anywhere near, not that I want to compare traumas, but I did not have child abuse. Though I mean, I did have trauma in the fact that like my dad didn't treat us very well and he was always hard on us. But besides that, I did have a pretty good childhood. But I always felt like there was something like wrong with me, and I knew that I blamed myself for like my dad not being in my life and so on and so forth. And now I just lost my train of thought. What was I talking about? Oh, awareness. How
Yes.
important awareness is to this whole like healing process.
Yes.
And you were aware that something wasn't quite right. And I don't want to say something was wrong with you, because for so long that's what we think is wrong, and it's not. Something
Yes.
happened to us,
Yes.
and the first, usually the dot, is awareness. So you were aware, you just couldn't make the other dot connect.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And once I was able to, even like you said, just giving it a name, just
Yeah.
understanding, brought a sense of relief. It brought a whole bunch of pain, make no mistake, but there was that, it's almost like it gave me permission to hurt that bad. That sense of
Yeah.
being given permission that our body and our nervous system is responding the way that it's supposed to.
Yeah. Wow. Oh my gosh. Like, I'm so glad that I asked questions, because I did not even realize, like, I didn't know your story before this except for the little blurb that I had. So I'm glad that I asked. Okay. So I know that you became a registered nurse. Well, you're still a registered nurse. And that, did you contribute that? Well, obviously you didn't, because you didn't know that was. But what made you go into nursing, I guess?
Yeah, really good, good question. I have always liked helping people. I am one of those caregivers. And however, my major in college, when I first went to college, was outdoor recreation. And I love to be outdoors. I'm a very
Yeah.
active person, very, if you can't tell, my hands are always moving, my
Yeah.
body's always moving. I just have a very active nervous system.
Yeah.
And then I realized that working in outdoor recreation, you work with a lot of kids at summer camps and teenagers at summer camps. And I realized I did not want to do that. That was not really where I wanted to work.
Mm-hmm.
And so one of the electives that we could take was a first aid class. And I took the first aid class and I loved it. And I was decided I was going to be a paramedic. I wanted to be a firefighter, paramedic. I was going to do that. And I have an aunt who's a nurse, and she talked me instead into going to nursing school because there are a lot more options. And so I started nursing school and never looked back. I had, like I said, I have a lot of energy. So I went into emergency department nursing. So that was a way that I could get this adrenaline fixed.
Yeah.
I've learned now that part of that is that because of the level of abuse that I had,
Mm-hmm.
I have to have really big things that activate me to feel something. And so the adrenaline rush that I would get in the ER allowed me to actually feel things that I didn't feel in my everyday life. And so, yes, my abuse did shape it. And it has given me opportunities that have been fantastic as a nurse and so many things. So yeah.
Yeah. So do you still are you just doing yoga now, or do you still do stuff with nursing?
I like to say I dabble in nursing
Okay.
and I teach movement.
Okay.
When the pandemic hit, I contemplated going back because there is such a need, and there still is such a need to go back.
Right.
Part of my hesitation is nursing is a very demanding profession,
Mm-hmm.
physically, emotionally, and I got burned out. So that's why I had left nursing and started teaching yoga full time anyway.
Okay.
And when the pandemic hit, I debated going back. However, I was concerned for my own mental health because I'd already had left because of burnout. Things were even more stressful. And so I started actually teaching yoga for healthcare workers. I started taking care of the healthcare workers. And so now I will take a short contract and do something enough to keep my nursing license current when it's a job that isn't going to put so much stress, so much overwhelm and trauma on my body, like going back into emergency department or ICU care.
Yeah.
So I
Okay.
dabble in it.
Right, right. So my mom was an LPN,
Yes.
and I saw, like, she was a single mom working her ass off for as long as I can remember until she went on disability for mental illness. My real dad, who they were not together, tried to tell me, like, convince me to go to nursing school, like, when I was in 17 or 18. And
Yeah.
after, like, seeing my mom and the stress that it put on her, I was like, I'm sorry, dad. Like, you cannot talk me into doing this. I don't like what I see and how stressed my mom was in these long hours.
Mhm.
Not that I didn't want to help people, but that was just not an avenue I wanted to. And yeah. Anyway, so I totally get that. And you were aware, like, of how it takes a toll on your mental health and so on and so forth. So
Yeah.
I get that. Okay. Now I want to connect the dot of how were you introduced to trauma informed yoga?
Yeah. As I was going through my journey and my healing, I practiced yoga for years,
Okay.
and I had made a connection with one of my yoga instructors just through classes, and I wanted her to teach private lessons to me. So I started doing private lessons with her, and she told me that she was not trauma informed, and I was like, I don't know what that means, so I don't care. I
Not
just
missing anything.
okay. And so when she said that, I started looking into it, and then I actually had in 2017, when all that stuff was happening, I ended up checking myself into a inpatient psychiatric unit. I was incredibly suicidal. I was drinking heavily and knew that I needed some help.
Yeah.
And one of the therapists that I saw there was actually getting trained to teach trauma-informed yoga. And so she and I would talk about that, and she explained it to me. So that's how I heard about it. And then during the pandemic, a good friend of mine who has had some trauma, we've talked about, we've shared some experiences. She had found a certification program that was online that is through this amazing group called Collective Resilience Yoga, and they teach trauma-informed yoga. She said she was signing up, asked if I wanted to, and I've done now 4 of their courses and am advanced certified. It was so phenomenal. So that's kind of how I found out about it.
That's awesome. And you are actually like, I just love learning from everybody because I had not known what this was until a lady was on my podcast, like I think 5 or 6 episodes, Carrie Schmidt, who lost her son to cancer. She is now currently doing trauma-informed yoga here where we live. So now, like, I was curious because I did not even know that this was a thing.
Yes.
So can you tell me what trauma-informed yoga is?
Yes. Trauma-informed yoga is yoga that, well, let me give you my interpretation of it because I think everybody's interpretation can be a little bit different. So my interpretation is that it's yoga that encourages and empowers people to make movements based on their nervous system, their body. So it provides opportunities for learning how to be in the body in ways that traditional yoga does not. It provides opportunities for choice, and it gives space for people not being able to tolerate certain movements. Traditional yoga can be very structured, very rigid. It can be for some people, and that's what is great, or one of the many things that is great about that. There is some structure, some pattern, some flow. And sometimes for some people that doesn't work. And so trauma-informed yoga provides more of a space for allowing people to have their experience, their feelings in ways that maybe are a little bit safer than in a traditional yoga class.
Okay. That makes sense. So we're going to break this down even more. Yes. What is the importance of movement and the nervous system?
Yes. Yeah, I love this question.
Yes.
And Melissa, for those of you that don't know, Melissa knows because we've talked about this and I've done this before. So the way I describe it is the best way that I've ever learned is it's called the hand brain. And it's a model that was designed by a psychologist named Dr. Dan Siegel. So I did not come up with this. This is not mine. Let me just be very clear. I'm just taking something that was brilliant from someone else. So if you take your palm, let me make sure I'm in the camera. So if you take your hand out, thumbs out to the side, and maybe visualize it. If you want to do this, maybe you could do 2 hands, but taking the thumb and folding your thumb in towards the center of your palm. So you still have your 4 fingers up, the thumb's in the center of the palm. So the thumb in the center of the palm is the part of the brain that activates our fear center, our stress, anxiety. This is what's called our fight or flight system. So, or it's called our sympathetic nervous system. So when we have something that we perceive as a threat, and it doesn't have to actually be there, it can be something that we just perceive as a threat, this starts to take over. Now, if you bring your fingers on top of that little thumb area, the top fingers are the rational part of our brain. And this is the part that controls our thinking, our connection. And just as an FYI, this part doesn't form until we're about age 25. So this is still really rapidly developing up until around 25. So this is, we're walking around our normal life. Our our fingers are over our thumb, and then something happens, we get activated, we flip our lid. So our fingers come up, and we're now being motivated by the thumb or the fear center, our fight or flight. So when you think fight or flight, what does your body do if you're going to run or fight? Your heart rate gets faster, your breathing gets faster, you get really irritable, that kind of stuff. So either we stay here, or sometimes when it gets too much, we go into overwhelm, which is right down here in the wrist. So on our hand brain, it's down here in the wrist. This is overwhelm. And in overwhelm, this is typically where we shut down. We freeze. Depression can be a part of this. And we're just really pretty much functioning. So what movement does is movement can help shift us from freeze through fight or flight and bring our rational brain back online. So brings us from the wrist through the thumb to the fingers coming back on top. Movement is one of those ways that really helps to shift that. When we go into fight or flight, we flip our lid, or even we're down into freeze. Movement shifts that energy and brings us back into more the rational brain part.
Yes, and that is such a great diagram. And I don't know, for people listening, something to note, your thumb, what that is when you're in like the fight or flight, that is that's anxiety. Like
Mhm.
that's exactly what you are feeling. That is what I have felt ever since my mom passed away. Um and it doesn't have to be a real true threat. It could be a thought that has came into your brain so fast and left, but now you are still in this like, oh my god, there's a threat when there's not really a threat to you. And when she first explained this to me and showed me, I'm like, oh my god, I flip my lid so much.
And that's one of the things, is normalizing it. We all do, until we
Mhm.
figure out how to have more tolerance, more ability to sit in that discomfort of when the fight or flight gets activated. Um, we flip our lid all the time. Humans just do that. We go
Yeah.
into freeze and overwhelm. It just is a normal part of the body. So normalizing it makes a big difference.
Yeah. And also something important, and this kind of goes along with it, is this is also a way to regulate our nervous systems, because whenever you have went through some kind of trauma, or you often go into like not regulated state. Okay. You are constantly like on edge, or for me, I know like chaos was normal for me. I moved 15 different times before I even went to high school. Like I was used to chaos. Um and so if you're ever like anxious, or you're angry, or you're like these feelings, that is because you need to find something to regulate. And that's why movement is so important.
Yes.
Dancing, the yoga she's talking about, it's huge. I hope I explained that okay.
Yeah, absolutely. So some of it, I'm just going to expound on that a tiny
Yeah,
bit. Okay
please.
with that? So when we grow up in chaos, or when so you mentioned moving a lot, mine was
Mhm.
child abuse. There's always that activation into the fight or flight. So that becomes our normal.
Yep.
And so movement can help release some of that, so we can find a new normal and find a different level of being able to tolerate peace or things like that. It's
Yes.
it's reframing what our structure, what we've grown up with, what our body is accustomed to.
I love that you said tolerate peace. Me and my boyfriend were at this, it's called the Redneck Retreat. It's our my boyfriend's parents' family like own this like little retreat, and we go and they have four-wheelers and Can-Ams and all this stuff. It is literally off the grid, so far in the country. It was amazing. We did not have any cell service. It was just us six, and that's all it was.
Yeah.
My anxiety was crazy that during that time, and I'm like, what the hell is going on? And at that moment I realized it's calm, it's
Yeah.
peaceful, I
Yeah.
don't have shit to worry about, and that
Mhm.
is not normal for me.
And it's uncomfortable. It's
Yeah.
really uncomfortable when you start to experience peace or
Yep.
happiness or things like that. Especially if you've had a chaotic childhood, or you grew up with this activation, fight or flight, starting to learn to feel those things is very uncomfortable.
Yeah. It so is. It definitely, definitely is. Okay, so I know we've talked a lot about it already. Heather, what other benefits are there to trauma informed yoga that we have not already discussed?
Yeah, many. So the way I teach it, I teach with a lot of playful movements.
Okay.
Play is a way that we can help rewire our brains.
Mhm.
All mammals, so humans, dogs, monkeys, everything, we're all born with these pre-wired circuits in our brain. And play is one of those. So if we can add playful movements into our movement repertoire or our movement toolbox, then that can actually tap into areas of the brain to help heal that we're born with, that are innate to us.
Yeah.
So trauma informed yoga, the way I teach it, has a lot of play and is going to be movements that are not at all traditional movement. One of the things with trauma informed yoga that I found incredibly helpful was being given permission to not move with the breath. For me, breath work can be very triggering, especially if I have to sit still. Listening to people breathe really will put me into flashbacks of my
Yeah.
childhood. And so being given permission not to move with the breath, that's a big one with trauma informed yoga, is you get to choose how and when you move.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, teachers do a lot more talking in trauma informed yoga because they're inviting exploration, curiosity. So when we're in a pose, I'll say things like, maybe explore. Where are you feeling something that maybe you've never done? Where are you feeling comfortable? What feels uncomfortable? Or, can you shift around? Notice how it feels when you shift around. So it's really more exploration in the body,
Yeah.
not necessarily trying to go pose to pose to pose.
Yeah. That's interesting that you mentioned that. Today I was meditating and I had to do this obvious breath work. And it was you were supposed to take deep breaths in and hold it as long as you could, but with ease. And I'm
Yeah.
like, that is impossible for me because when I take a deep breath in, I'm like, my shoulders are up here. And then when I let it out, it's like that's when I can finally. I was like, I don't know if I can do this with ease part like that you're talking about.
And so that's where trauma informed yoga would say, okay, let's find a way to help your nervous system do that. And so if I were working with a client, if you were my client, we were
Yeah.
working with that, we would work to find a movement that you could do so that you could find that breath holding with ease.
Yeah.
Or it may just not work for you and let's skip it. Let's find something that does work.
Yeah. That's so interesting. Oh my gosh. I'm so excited. I'm so excited. Okay. I hope this question's going to make sense more I hope this question makes sense. How do you teach trauma informed yoga? And you can interpret that however the hell you want to answer it.
Yeah. Okay. I got lots of answers for that.
Okay.
I got lots of ways. So I do it a couple of different ways, and it really kind of depends on what the person's looking for. So I do have 3 classes that I teach that are just they're online virtual classes. It's run a little bit more like a yoga class. However, I do still a lot of playful movements, but it is more run like a yoga class with learning resilience, with talking about trauma and tapping into some of that information. So it's kind of
Mhm.
like the light way of doing it. I do individual lessons. I work one-on-one with clients, and that's where we do more of the intensive shifting out because
Okay.
that needs to be really focused. And the way that I do it, I've actually shifted from calling it trauma informed yoga. I call mine trauma informed movement
Mm.
because I'm not doing straight traditional yoga movements. And in order to be sensitive to cultural appropriation, I don't want to call what I'm doing yoga because it's not necessarily yoga
Yeah.
specifically. So I call mine more trauma informed movements, and it's where we work to shift. we work with a person's negative belief about themselves. We work to find energy to shift that. We do a lot of play. And the way that I teach my classes and my individual lessons are, we do some sort of resourcing. So finding movements that help settle us. And then we'll add some intensity in. So we'll do something that can create more faster heart rate, maybe more anxiety if we're tapping into some emotional stuff, if we're doing the one-on-one, and then we come back down and resource. So it's just kind of this ebb and flow of soothing, activating, soothing, activating, and then exploring and letting the body guide instead of the mind. Most often as we're doing things, we let our mind dictate. And this one, we really work to listen to what the person's body is telling them. And that's really hard for people to start to do. And so it's an exploration. And the one-on-one, we get much deeper into that.
I love that. And you make such a good point about how our mind always like is usually dictating us over our body. And I think that is like in the space of like meditation and stuff and like sitting with yourself and exploring and bringing awareness. A lot of people don't even do that yet. And it's okay. We're not taught that. Now we're trying to get people to, like this is what you have to do to get to know yourself and so on and so forth. So I think that's so important. I'm trying to do that.
I'm going to be a huge advocate for this. I'm going to keep saying this.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be in stillness. I have felt a lot of shame for a long time because I can't sit and meditate. That actually makes me want to peel my skin off. And so it's that excruciating for me. And yet if I do a movement with it, like something that goes side to side in particular, that I can sit and find the meditation. And so forcing our bodies to do something because our mind is saying, oh, we need to meditate, can actually cause more harm to the body. We're stuffing that energy down when maybe meditation is a moving meditation. That's how I meditate, is moving meditations.
That's such a great point. And even moreover, I think I was just trying to like people not dealing with their emotions, just like going to watch TV or drinking or something. Like I'm just not going to deal with this and not try to get in tune with myself at all. Like that's what we want to encourage is like, hey, try this.
And and there are lots of different ways to do it. So don't get discouraged if it is uncomfortable.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of where I was. Like,
exactly.
Don't get discouraged because there's various different ways of doing it.
And that's such a great point. I love that. I love that you're saying like, I can't meditate sitting still. Like, no, like, and I love that because then people might hear that and be like, oh my God, thank you, Angie, because I can't. It drives me crazy or something. So we need to have other people say that kind of thing. Okay. My next question to you is, do people have to know that they're like, do they have to know of their trauma before wanting to go to trauma-informed yoga?
Great question. And the answer is no.
Okay.
Yoga itself can bring about some of this emotional change that I'm talking about. Before I became trauma-informed yoga certified, I would go to yoga classes and I would end up sobbing in the fetal position on my mat because even traditional yoga has great benefits to help release. One of the nice things about doing movement is you don't have to know the why. You don't have to know what happened. It's really more about tapping into the sensation in the body and finding ways to release it. So, for example, shame has been a big emotion for me. I've struggled with shame a lot and I feel emotionally itchy. I feel just yucky. I kind of hate myself, but I don't need to know the whys if I go move and try and shift that energy out. I don't even have to know that shame. In fact, it's taken me 8 months to be able to acknowledge that's what that emotion, that sensation is.
Yeah.
So it's really more about, once again, not using the brain. We don't need to name it. We don't need to know it. It's more feeling it and shifting it out.
I love that. I love that. I could like ask a million questions about this just because, you're like, do you have to be a beginner? Do you have to like know all about this stuff? That's
Nope.
huge.
I have worked with people that have never done yoga before. I have worked with people that tell me, "Oh, I can't do yoga. I'm not flexible enough. I've tried yoga, nope, it doesn't matter." Trauma-informed yoga is all about trauma-informed movement, yoga is all about meeting a person where they are. And so if a person comes to me and they're feeling tons of anxiety, we run. We do very active movements. If a person comes to me and they're struggling with depression, then we lay on the floor and maybe move our fingers. And so it really is not about what have you done? What do you know? It's about being in the moment and being in the body.
That's great. That makes sense. Okay, you said you have found yourself sobbing on your yoga mat before.
Yes.
Does this happen a lot with like trauma informed yoga? Or
Um, or traditional
yeah,
yoga.
yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. It's
Okay.
when I personally have done it multiple times, and teachers will just come up and give you like a little, my teachers would give like a little pat or acknowledgement.
Yeah.
It can, because and I'm going to say even traditional yoga and trauma informed yoga, we're doing movements, we're shifting things around. So it's very common to feel some emotions with it.
Yep.
Doing trauma informed yoga can produce sometimes some bigger emotional stuff, because it's tapping into the body in a way that is a little bit different than traditional yoga. And so people might start to feel something, and then all of a sudden they're really feeling it, something that they've never felt before. And so that can be a very common response.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Interesting. Can this can trauma informed yoga slash movement replace therapy?
I say no. I I think it works better in conjunction with, because we shift movement, energy, trauma. We're not looking to necessarily process it. We're looking to shift it so that it can be processed. And so processing then through with a licensed therapist, I think, is actually more helpful when done together. For me, as I've gone through my journey, I have been through therapy. I'm still in therapy, and I needed something that was able to shift the energy, because all the stuff that I was processing was really overwhelming, and I didn't have a way to get that out. So I think they work better when done in conjunction.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, this is amazing. Shift so you can process it.
Shift so you can process it. It makes it easier to sit in that discomfort of whatever it is that you need to work through.
Yeah, amazing. Can I ask you what kind of therapy you have done, like what you've explored? Because there's so many different types.
So many different types. I
Yeah.
have done talk therapy.
Okay.
I've done art therapy. I have done, and the type that I do now is EMDR.
Yep.
For people that are not familiar with it, it's eye movement desensitization and reorganization, or something like that. I don't remember exactly what it stands for, but it's literally you do some sort of bilateral or both-sided body movement, because it processes into the neurons and the brain in ways that you can't with talk therapy.
Yeah. It's amazing. I had somebody that did that when she lost her child. She did EMDR and it literally changed her life. And
Mhm.
she was able to start like a whole business because that I don't want to say cured her, but it was so powerful for her to do that.
It's very effective in reprocessing and desensitizing those feelings as well.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I
Yeah.
firmly believe in it. Yeah.
That's awesome. All right. Perfect. Perfect. Okay. So tell me specifically about, I know we've touched a little bit about it on it, but your company is called AB Yoga, correct?
I just changed the name of it because, yeah. So it's Angie Berrett Movement, and it's
Okay.
because what I was talking about, the cultural appropriation with the term yoga. I'm being very sensitive. So it's Angie Berrett Movement.
Perfect. Okay. So tell our listeners if they're interested in getting to know or getting to connect with you, what kind of services you do offer.
Yes. Like I said, I have 3 yoga classes that are kind of, I call them like level one trauma. So you're just kind of moving, maybe starting to explore it. I do a lot of work one-on-one with clients. I offer private lessons. And if you're interested in that, I also offer a free 15-minute consultation. So definitely reach out. We can talk about what you're looking to shift, what you could use help with, how movement could work for you. And then I do offer stand-up paddleboard yoga, but that one has to be done in person, and that one is seasonal dependent. So those are what I offer. The best way to get in touch with me is my website. It's Angie Berrett Movement. And I spell my last name Berrett. So angieberrettmovement.com has all my social medias. You can schedule a 15-minute consult, all that stuff through my website.
That is awesome. And I actually saw on your website like the paddleboard stuff, and I'm like,
Yes.
I would probably fall off in 5 seconds, but I'm intrigued.
What I tell everybody is falling isn't failing. It means that you're pushing your body to limits that you've never been before. And everybody says that, and we go at whatever pace feels good to you. And
Yeah.
I love it. When I fall in, I still fall in. And
Right.
it's such a great exercise in mindfulness because it brings you instantly back to your mind has wandered. And so you have to figure out it's a fun way. I'm big on play.
Yeah, I love it because right now I'm doing bar and there's a lot of like balance with that. And like you do fall over because you have like one leg up in the air. And when I first started it, I didn't have like that great a balance. But now that I've done it so many times, I'm like, oh, my balance is getting better. So I might not suck as bad as I'm saying I am. But
I don't think you would suck, and neither would I ever tell anybody that they sucked. I bet you would do much better than you realize. At the end, you would be like, wow, I did better than I thought I did, because like 99% of my clients say that when we come back and they're like, oh, that wasn't as hard as I thought.
yeah, that is awesome. Okay, before we go and we do the little practice or the sequence, is there anything that I have left out that you want to share either about you or about trauma-informed movement that we have not talked about?
I just want to say that there is hope if you're struggling, if you feel anything, even if you don't know what it is, even if you don't have words for it, that doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with you. There's hope. So there's lots of different modalities. Melissa has a great podcast for hope, but there's hope. It doesn't mean there's something wrong with you. It means that you just haven't found the right thing yet.
Absolutely. 100%. Okay, so I have one last question before we go and we do the sequence.
Yes.
And I asked, do you already know what it is?
I don't.
Oh, I love it. Sometimes I'm like, maybe they know, maybe they don't know. Okay. Angie, in your own words, what does the bright side of life mean to you?
Oh, that is a great question. To me, it means living. I'm going to bring it back to my black hole. I've felt like I've had a black hole for so long. So to me, it means living in the sun, living as big, as bright, as authentically you as possible. That's what that means to me.
Are you ready to show us a little practice, little sequence on movement?
Yes, let's do it. Woohoo!
Let's do it. All right.
All right. I am going to back up.
Okay. Stay right here.
I'm going to do the standing. Melissa's going to do it seated. And I just have to make sure I don't roll over my dog as I do this. As she's sitting right here.
That's not part of the movement.
No, that's not part of the movement. Let me just adjust my camera. So if any of you get motion sick, definitely look away for just a minute. Okay. So a couple of movements. Like I said, you can do it seated or standing. You can do whatever variation that you want. If you're seated, pull any fleshy bits out. Like actually pull your fleshy bits out. And then just kind of shift and really root down into your chair.
Okay.
Everybody press your feet into the ground. Maybe just kind of roll side to side, front to back, and see if you can find all four corners of your feet. If you want more activation, try lifting up your toes and noticing how does that change the activation. And then I like to start to add a gentle sway to my body. So starting to just sway side to side, once again, seated or standing. Toes can be up or down. Maybe you want to explore what it feels like to move through both of those. And then as we do this, start to notice what's happening in your body. For me, my shoulders are starting to drop down. My breath is starting to relax. Melissa, I see your shoulders dropping. This doesn't feel good for some people, so it might not feel good for you. Totally fine. So now try shifting front to back. Standing or seated, same thing. So start noticing now what's coming up for you. For this one, for me, it's very uncomfortable. So my heart rate's starting to be like I'm starting to contract. My glute muscles just contracted. Maybe try circles now. Now maybe try going in circles.
I got to try not to run into my mic.
Yeah, I know, right? So just noticing what's happening in your body. This one for me is kind of a medium in between. And if you notice, my body just went right back to the side to side. I like the side to side. So it's starting to explore what movements settle for you. So for me, it's side to side. If it was front to back, come back to that. And then everybody shake it out. Shake out your arms, shake out your legs, get some wiggle, get some jiggle. All right. So this one is a great one that works if you're feeling some depression. If you're feeling some anxiety, just do it faster and I'll cue through it. This one is a great one for some self-support, some self-love, and some self-compassion. So if you're seated, press your sitting bones down, lengthen up through your torso, shoulders, maybe roll a couple of times. If you're standing, slight bend in your knees, bring your feet to a comfortable distance. Same thing, lengthen through your torso, roll your shoulders. And then we're just gonna start to open our arms wide as you want. Maybe you want them down, maybe you wanna try exploring up. And then wrapping your arms around you, maybe holding hands, grabbing elbows, or even giving yourself a hug. And then here's the magic. Give a little shake like you're hugging someone that you love. And then arms opening wide as you want. And then as you come in, maybe cross the other side. So elbows and do the little shimmy, the little shake. And then move at whatever pace you want. If you want to move with the breath, maybe inhale, open wide. And as you breathe out, cross your arms, get the little shake like you're hugging someone that you love. Inhale, if you're standing and you want to add a bend to the knees, arms open wide, standing up. And as you exhale, maybe bend the knees. Notice what that feels like. Get that little shake. And then keep moving. I'm going to add some variations. If you're like, I am not doing that big of a movement, maybe just try your hands. Like you're feeling a little bit depressed, you're not sure you want to do anything, maybe just open your hands wide and then bring them back together. Doesn't have to be a big movement. If you're feeling some anxiety, maybe you want to go faster, big, open, close, open, close. And so it's really tapping into the amount of energy that you want to release.
I love it.
And then I'm going to move medium pace because mostly I want to move medium pace. That's what my body wants. So you get to go whatever pace you want. Inhale with the breath if you want. Exhale, get that shimmy and that shake. So maybe do this about 2 more times. Arms opening wide. Crossing them around. Give yourself some love. Last one, arms open wide, and then hugging in, give yourself that love. Beautiful. And then bring your arms down by the side. And this is the really important part. Shake it out. Shake out your arms, shake out your legs, get some wiggle, get some jiggle. This actually has been shown to release that tension. We have to get it out. So that's a good one for self-love, self-support. This next one that I'm going to do, I love. It's a great one if you're looking to get rid of a lot of energy. So a lot of anxiety, a lot of stress, a lot of emotional angst. You're not quite even sure what's going on. You don't have a name for it. Totally fine. This one works great. I like to call this roller skating octopus. So we're going to pretend like we're an octopus on roller skates or rollerblades or any sort of shoe that has some sort of wheel on it. Now, we have no bones and we have 8 limbs. So how would you move if you were an octopus on roller skates? So where would your arms go? Yeah, get the shake, get that wiggle. I laugh because you're going to feel like you look silly, which you do. And then when you're ready, imagine now that you're just a sea anemone or a sea cucumber floating in the water. Find the drift of the water, the support. Mm-hmm. But maybe notice what's happening in your body. So notice maybe you might still have a fast heart rate. That's okay, but notice what's happening as you kind of float or pretend to float on this water. And then when you're ready, coming back to roller skating octopus, getting out, where would your other limbs be? Let them be as crazy. Oh, shoot, I'm off to the side of the camera. Yes, get it out. And then when you're ready, come back. Floating as a sea anemone, sea cucumber, whatever fish you want to be.
We have 2 big fish tanks in our house, so I love that you're using this.
Oh, right? So you're just floating along. And then we'll do one more round of each if you want to. If you don't, options, you get to sit this one out. You get to skip it, do it if you want, do it 100 more times, whatever works for you. So when you're ready, roller skating octopus. Yes, getting it out. Woo! How would you be if you didn't have any bones and you had 4 more extremities? I would have some coming out of my head. Yeah. And when you're ready, just relaxing, floating back, finding that support of the water or that imagined support, just that sway, that gentle drift. And maybe notice, check in, how does your body feel now?
Way better.
Way better. Yeah.
Because you know I had some stomach stuff going on.
Yeah. And has that shifted out?
Yeah.
Or is shifting? Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. So then come back, shake it out. Shake out your arms, shake out your legs. I like to say the more wiggle and jiggle you get, the better, the more it gets it out. Woo! And then arms reach out wide. I'm going to put them in front. And then as you come down, hands come down to your heart center. Thank you so much for practicing with me all today. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace, peace. Beautiful job, everybody. That was amazing.
That was awesome, Angie. I love that so much. I'm going to go back and watch this and do the stand-up version because I want to do the octopus on the roller skate standing up.
It's so fun. And that's one of the things that movement can be. And laughing helps to shift that energy. So doing something that makes you feel silly and laugh really does shift that energy. So absolutely, when you need it, do it as much as you want. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So one last story and then I'll let you go. Yesterday, my boyfriend and I were making BLTs on the grill. And I get in the refrigerator and I don't see any freaking mayonnaise. Okay. And like, he will not have BLTs without mayonnaise. And I'm like, gosh dang it. I have to go to the freaking store. So I'm pissed at this point. Like, I'm mad. I don't want to leave my house. I was literally just got back from my house. So I go to our store, Deerberg's. I get in the car after checking out to realize that I had mayonnaise. It was just in the pantry. It wasn't in the refrigerator. And Brandon is the only person in my house that like I could yell at, but for no reason because it's my own damn fault. So I felt this in myself. Like I was anxious. I was pissed off. I was angry. And I literally just like yelled at the top of my lungs in my car to like get this energy out before I came home and took it out on somebody that didn't deserve it.
That's perfect. One of the things that I'll have my clients do is like punch a pillow and just scream it out. It's all about shifting that energy so you don't flip your lid and take it out on someone that is really not the cause of whatever's building up. Mhm.
Exactly. Exactly. It felt so good. I'm like, these people probably next to me are like, what the hell is wrong with this lady? But I needed to do it. So my boyfriend did not get it. So, Angie, thank you so much for your time today. I greatly appreciate it.
Melissa, thank you so much for having me. I have enjoyed this so much.
So have I. All right. That's it. That's a wrap.